Hey guys, I'm Rhiannon Tracey. I am a sea-farming complete quadriplegic, been living my life on wheels now for almost 13 years.
Wow.
I'm the founder of a not-for-profit organisation, which is a recovery facility for people with neurological conditions called The Next Step. I'm a disability advocate, influencer, keynote speaker, and most importantly, a fur kid mum.
Yeah, you do love your animals.
I love my animals.
You really do.
On my form, it says motivational speaker, resilience coach, diversity inclusion advocate, model, and influencer,
Oh yeah,
and
there's
business
that
owner.
too.
There's a bit going on there.
Yeah, a woman of many hats.
Yes,
What's the main hat, do you reckon,
indeed.
out of that?
Look, I just think that given that we're living this life, which is a full-time job in itself, I think resilience coach and disability advocate is probably
Yeah.
the full-time.
I don't call myself a resilience coach at all, to be honest, that's personally. Do you, when you are working with people to educate them around resilience, are most of them disabled or able-bodied people too?
Bit of both now, so it's definitely opened up to the general community of people, but it all began, I guess, being the person that I looked for or needed 13 years ago.
Yeah, which wasn't around. I
Exactly.
don't mind that.
Which
Cool.
didn't exist.
Yeah.
13 years ago, you were on a holiday with your mum and your best friend in Bali. First of all, when I read that little bit,
I was like, oh,
first
no.
thing that came to head though, what did you think?
Scooter.
Scooter. I was like,
No
oh, it's a
helmet.
scooter accident. You
No
know,
helmet.
as a person who's been to Bali like 4 or 5 times, has ridden scooters. My life has changed now from having a kid. I think I just get taxis everywhere, but that's a different story. But that's not your story.
No, look, I can honestly say I've been to Bali probably, umpteen times and never ridden a scooter.
Oh.
So, funnily enough, no, it was a swimming pool accident. Dove into a swimming pool that was labelled as deep, but wasn't exactly deep. So, a bit of a fluke instance. First thing people generally ask me, especially when I'm talking to students, is was I drunk? Because I was in Bali with my girlfriends. And no, I wasn't. I actually remained fully conscious throughout the whole thing. Remember it like it was yesterday.
What are we, Angus? 60 eps in, like 3 or 4 have been from diving accidents. Sorry.
Yeah.
It is so common, and you would not think that, would you? Like, you don't get much. You get that little education from Harold, or in Victoria where I lived, Harold in the van, you know, happy
Harold
Harold
the
giraffe.
giraffe.
Yeah.
And he would tell you not jump head first, right? That's the
Right.
only time you'd learn about it. But there's so many accidents of people jumping in pools.
Look, I was a pretty good swimmer too. So it was just the wrong thing at the wrong time.
I think it's also, we've all been to Bali, and for people who have travelled there, they know the same. They don't have the restrictions or the safety regulations that we do in Australia.
OH&S.
Yeah, so we're talking about no pool fencing necessarily. We're talking about no signage. And by signage, perpetuating to what we're talking about here, no thing that says 0.5 meters this side, 3 meters this side. You've probably just got, a beautiful tiled backyard in a villa into water, right?
Absolutely. And just like you said, no OH&S and definitely no public liability laws like we have here either, which meant that my entire disability or injury was completely uncompensated. NDIS didn't exist then.
So you dived in, you remained conscious. It must be, when you can't swim up because you bump your head, you remain conscious, you go, oh, that hurt.
That's exactly how I remember it, just thinking, I don't know if I can say shit, but shit, that really hurt.
Yeah.
You can say whatever you want, by the way.
And I was just face down for, what felt like ages and, had those frustrations of not being able to move. But never for a second did I think that, I was a quadriplegic at that moment. Waiting for my best friend to jump in and pull me out felt like the longest time. But, one thing I always say about instances like this, because they do happen, like you said, so many diving accidents, is, we can't take responsibility for everything that happens to us, but we can always take responsibility for the outcome. And for me, that was the case, shit time, shit place, shit scenario, but, I've been able to create a brilliant life.
How long did your friend look at you thinking you were taking the piss before she jumped in to save you?
Yeah, exactly.
Because I would have been like, good one, Ray.
Yeah, absolutely. I always tell kids just to not play that game where you're just bobbing
That's
in
what I
the
mean.
water anymore.
I play that- I'm serious.
Dead fish.
Dead fish in the water. Yeah, look, I couldn't tell you exactly minute for minute, but it felt like an eternity.
Yeah. And then we have spoken about with an episode with Joel Sardi, late 50s, if you want to go back and listen to it, anybody. But
Joel's not in his late 50s.
he's not in his late 50s.
He's like a really,
he's
father
30.
Father of a few. He's a good-looking 30-year-old.
But Dylan, you spoke about at the time, do not touch people after they've had an accident because, you might have broken your back but not hurt your spinal cord, but then someone grabs you and hurts you, damages your spinal cord.
Yeah, especially the neck's so fragile. So,
But the education around
Yeah.
that doesn't exist. So I'm imagining, and we're not blaming your friend, we don't know what happened, but they would have just jumped in, grabbed you, pulled you out, and I guess the service or the treatment that you would have got would have been just like to try and figure out and save you at that moment.
We
Yeah.
were pretty lucky at that point because friends who had actually been out with that night worked in the mines at Perth, so knew all about first aid and actually knew how to get me out of the water safely. So thank God that Bali's so close to Perth.
Yeah, a lot of WA people in Perth.
shout out to the
Yes.
miners, love Bali.
Shout out to the
Yeah,
miners.
fly out of Bali. Don't go home,
And-
just Denpasar.
So what happened? Like,
Well, I had travel insurance, which is absolutely why I'm here today telling my story. Best $100 I've ever spent in my life. But I was taken in the back of like a panel van actually to the Bali International Medical Centre, which is a Western hospital. Credit cards, like mum was there swiping credit cards before we could even, be allowed inside. I had a CT scan. CT scan confirmed the break and that the fragments of my broken vertebrae were wedging into both sides of my spinal cord. So the doctors told mum I'd need to have emergency surgery in Bali, and then I was off to the Denpasar hospital from there.
so you had the emergency surgery?
I did,
Jesus.
but Bali was hit with a 7.6 magnitude earthquake that night. So my emergency surgery happened about 24 hours later.
How does the Bali hospital hold up in that moment?
I mean, I've seen photos. You can actually Google that particular earthquake and see, like, I've got photos and keynotes of the outside of the hospital, and it was just in pieces.
And then nothing fell on you though.
No.
Were you
Nothing-
thinking at this point, someone wants me to die? Or were you thinking, I'm the luckiest person
Absolutely.
ever?
No, it's funny because I don't know if you've heard that story of like that the car accident happens, mum and the son, and then the mum like picks up the car's like on top of the kid.
Oh, they say like adrenaline
Yeah,
can make you do
adrenaline
ridiculous
kicks. Yeah,
things.
so my mum at this point, like I could only see up because I was on my back, but my mum was over the top of me, like protecting me from the rubble. And I actually remember saying to her, like, we're gonna die tonight. And my mum's name's Shaz. So Shaz always says the most ridiculous things at the right time, but she was like, at least if we're gonna go together. And I was like, that is the worst thing you could be saying, but that's exactly how I felt.
Fair enough. I had a mate who, I don't know if I've told this on this podcast before, if I have, we can chop it, but I had a mate who had a car, he plays Anthony Cottrell, played tennis with him. He had a car accident where he double flipped, caught on fire, walked out fine. Month later, same car accident, double flipped, walked out fine. Went on a Bucks party to Turkey, walked out to the pool on day one, just slipped and didn't even jump in, just slipped, fell over, broke his neck. And he was like, you finally got me. He's like, you've been trying for a while. And he's like, it's true though. Like when,
I've heard stories
what,
like
like
that.
you just,
yeah.
what does that mean? Like, it's just part of it.
I mean, I've done some crazy shit in Bali, but, for this to happen, it's just fluke.
It's fluke. And it's not, you can't control it.
No.
Exactly.
Would it, being over there with your mum and your best friend, when I read about that, I was like, that's probably a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing that you got Shaz there protecting you from rubble, being, a superstar without the cape. But also your closest people in your life witnessed the most traumatic event they'll ever witness. And certainly for you, did you have conversations with them post that accident? I'm sure down the track about how they felt and how they reacted, because they probably weren't internalized a lot of it for a long time because you were the focus.
I think everybody deals with grief in their own, personal way. My best friend and I, we had been best friends since we're about 6 or 7 years old, and we actually don't have anything to do with each other's lives anymore because she needed to process what she needed to process.
How do you feel about that?
I mean, in the early days when you're vulnerable, it hurt like hell. You couldn't understand why somebody who was a part of that entire situation couldn't be there anymore. But I think as I've gotten older, and I like to say a lot wiser, I understand. I get it.
Does she know that? That you still care about it like that? Or was this
Yeah.
one of the first times you said it publicly? do you reckon?
No, we actually literally walked past each other probably about 6 years ago. And
Ghosted you.
no, we both kind of turned around
Oh,
and,
good.
and had a bit of a coffee in one of the streets where we were on, and had a bit of a chat about what we were doing in each other's what we were doing with our own lives. And I think it's a lot easier to forgive than it is to hold grudges. And she's got a beautiful, happy life. She's got the life she wanted, and mine took a turn, but I love my life.
Good answer. Love that. Love hearing that. When I'm just running here, so the travel, I just want to touch on the travel insurance part, because
It's a huge part.
Literally, we have a lot of young people listening who would not bother getting travel insurance,
Yeah.
right?
I remember going 18 years old. My first time overseas was to Bali with
And
my
you're like,
best
20
friends,
bucks?
and
What?
I didn't pay it. I was like, no, it was 70.
That's too many bintangs.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
was like, we were riding around on scooters doing all the silly things.
Well-
and I remember, but $70 to me when I was 18 years old was huge. I was
Yeah.
like, I actually put it into the point of, it's probably 2 nights out for me. I can't afford this $70.
Not anymore for you. You're a bit cashed up, Bogan. You own a podcast empire. Jeez, you're
Oh,
killing it.
wow.
Including this one. He's my boss. So what did that travel insurance pay for that you wouldn't have really got that saved your life? Just to put into context how important it was.
Well, it paid for being in hospital, all the medical expenses. So I think my family worked it out. I was in the hospital for 2.5 weeks, closer to 3. And we worked it out that we probably would have near had to sell our family home to be able to cover all those expenses, plus the air ambulance out. So a doctor and a nurse flew over from Australia 2.5 weeks later to bring me home. All the complications in the world that could happen in Bali happened. I need 3 hours to talk about everything that happened, but it got me home. It got me home, and
Hundreds of thousands of dollars?
hundreds of
Easy.
thousands.
But that air ambulance
Hundreds.
alone.
Yeah,
There's the one ride on the air ambulance is like 100 bangers. Like,
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And-
yeah. So definitely money.
I don't know that as fact, but I know it's
Yeah.
very expensive.
And so, I know you've got, like you said, it was a long time. I'm going to abbreviate and not to dismiss the story at all, but you had water on your lungs that needed to be properly taken out. You also had the complications from the initial surgery that had to be refixed in Australia. All of those costs as well, because it's international insurance.
Yeah.
Does it cover the whole part of it? Was the Australian part of the hospital bills also covered, or will that just go into like Medicare or something like
That's
that?
Medicare.
Right. Okay.
And private health.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting.
I'm
I
a
just
big
didn't know.
insurance person.
Well, you would be as well.
Absolutely.
Before we move on from Bali, is Bali damaged for you? You've been back.
I've been back.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Bali being the spiritual place that it was, everyone, our extended family in Bali wanted us to come back and perform all these ceremonies and everything, which my mum actually did at the wrong swimming pool. So she went back before I went back.
Wait, they want you to come bless it or something?
Yeah.
Really?
So basically, as part of my recovery journey, Mum needed to go back and perform a ceremony, and then I needed to go back. And it was really funny because when we went back, Mum went to the wrong pool, and I was like, "Good job, Shazza. This
Yeah.
is why my recovery is where it is."
Well, we should mention you're quite holistic as well, so that kind of makes sense to get rid of
Absolutely.
it.
I thought the only pilgrimage Australians do is to Potato Heads.
That's-
I've never been there ever.
It's actually not. It's not bad on the accessibility front. So you should check it
wow.
out. Yeah.
Good shout outs to
All
that.
Yeah.
those seven
Potato
neck
Head,
joints
if
are
you're,
pretty good.
Except, I mean, it's like
can't
a
get
roller
there.
coaster for your wheels to get to
On
the
it.
place.
Yeah, because when you I
the nature
literally-
strip.
I wheel
Mate,
down the middle of
I've
the road.
seen what this guy can do.
No, I wheel down the middle of the like literally on the
On
road.
the road, yeah.
Because you can't go on the sidewalks, and they don't get many wheelchairs there, and they're like everyone drives past filming. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking stop filming because you're going to crash into me. But the roads are great, but the sidewalks are not great.
But you just
Anyway,
get everyone to carry you around in Bali. That was the
helpful,
best
the people.
thing. Well,
Amazing.
that's
They're
actually,
lovely. Yeah.
that trip to Bali going back in 2013 actually is what I guess piqued my confidence, because it made me realize that, unless I was willing to adapt the way that I got around, I was going to miss out on things.
Yeah.
So, if I wanted to get into shop, I needed to be carried in.
Like it.
Another question that I can't remember the guest, and apologies if you are listening, but something that really I found interesting about a past guest once again was they had an injury overseas and they needed to be transported back to Australia, and they had to have like the whole back of the plane.
Carey?
M. Carey.
Yeah.
And so she's talked about like blocking out like 7 rows. Do you remember the process of being flown home? Because you had a doctor and a nurse with you. Can you take us through that? Because a lot of people wouldn't understand.
So I was meant to come home on a normal flight like that with everything blocked out. But the doctor and the nurse, the medical team in Australia were basically being told that I was well enough to go home like that.
Oh, from the Indonesian doctors?
Oh, and they got
Correct.
there, okay.
Yeah. So when they got there, they were like, what the hell's going on? Like I was like dying, literally dying. So I was emergency evacuated after 2 days.
PJ.
Yeah. Just
Private jet.
out of there.
No, the air ambulance, mate.
Yeah.
It's an air ambulance
Yeah.
international.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's a full ambulance.
Oh, like a
plane.
royal
Yeah.
flying
Mate.
doctors kind of
Yeah,
thing.
but like that's where if you don't have insurance, it's like
Right.
literally $100,000. It's
Yeah,
a full
it's
hospital in the
insane.
air.
I had no idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They're
Had a
massive.
huge fear of flying before that, but now not so much.
They're amazing, those planes, man. Yeah,
There you
really,
go.
really cool.
Really cool to know.
Now
Thank
you.
you.
get back. Obviously, your life's different. In the chair. How was the grieving process for you? When did you, I guess, mentally turn into a motivational speaker, resilient coach, diversity, inclusion advocate? Was this overnight or did it take time?
Mate, I was doing it while I was in hospital, purely because there was, I was one of the only females on a ward of 20 guys. And, after being in there for a few months, there was a 13-year-old girl who'd come through, same thing had happened. She'd had a diving accident. And I just kind of started becoming a mentor for her. Like, you have your good and your bad days. And, it's an emotional roller coaster. Your life has changed dramatically. But I was 20 and I still had goals and aspirations, and I had shit days. I spent my 21st birthday in the hospital. That was heart-wrenching. But I don't know, talking for me was always a way to kind of deal with things, and I found it easier to talk to other people as opposed to talk to the medical team. And it was just something that, pun intended, I literally just fell into.
Yeah, but medical, so as part of my consulting firm, GSA, we educate. One of our programs is the health department. So we have 5 pilot hospitals educating them, doctors, nurses, staff, to communicate with people with disability. Because you think, of course, doctors know how to talk to people with disability, but they don't. Like, people come in so frequently with their disability and they think we're just like every other patient, but we live there.
Yeah.
This is our life. You're not going to get better. You know what I mean? So the bed manner, sometimes they're not the best people to speak to, are they? And
No, absolutely not. And I found it really confronting because the people that were coming in were, the guys playing wheelchair rugby and like the athletes.
Yeah.
And I've never been into sport. So for me, that was really not motivating. And I hate using the word inspiring, but it wasn't something that, was pepping me up. So, I couldn't control much at that point, but all I could control was the fact that I knew that no matter what happened within my life moving forward, I was going to become the person that I needed.
You have spoken about not accepting your prognosis. How long did that take to not accept that?
Diagnosis?
Diagnosis?
Prognosis?
Yeah. Don't know.
That's a different word.
I think I read about it on one of your bios. You've accepted it now?
I think there's a big difference between accepting and adapting. So, if I had have accepted my prognosis or diagnosis, I don't know what word we're going to use.
Prognosis is the right
it
word.
the same?
I'll
I'm
give
not
you
sure.
what
Can you
prognosis
please Google?
I got a feeling I got it right.
Did you?
Good feeling.
When you're so vulnerable and, you've had a traumatic experience like this occur, I guess the easy thing for the medical team to say is like, this is what we expect to happen based on textbooks and their qualifications and all that. And I have huge respect for the Australian medical team. But I think there's a big difference between saying, no, you can't do this and we just don't know. And especially when you're so vulnerable, like that can change the path of everything. So, to this day, if I had have accepted all the things that they told me I wouldn't be able to do, I wouldn't be doing or I wouldn't be living the life that I was given. So I've learned to adapt because now I do absolutely more things now with my life than I ever would have done prior to my injury. So
I love hearing that because it can be hard.
Yeah.
Especially if you believe what you're told. And
absolutely.
What you are getting told is the exact definition of a prognosis.
Baby, let's go.
An opinion based on medical experience of the likely course of a medical condition.
There you go.
Could not have got it any better, Angus.
Oh, swish.
I sit corrected.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
That is a home run from you.
So just on your diagnosis for the moment, is your spinal cord affected? Because I've seen you stand and walk. You can walk with crutches. So have you a broken, but you said it's C5 incomplete.
It's such a complex injury. Like no two spinal cord injuries are ever going to be the same. I refer to them as being like snowflakes. Given that I have an incomplete injury, which is bizarre given I had 3 surgeries in Australia to correct what Bali had attempted to fix. So that meant causing more trauma to my cord. My cord's still intact. Spinal cord doesn't heal, but everything around it does. So, I've been grateful that I've had a lot of natural recovery. That being said, I also threw myself into a really intense recovery program that if I had have continued on, I probably would have walked because that was my initial goal. All I wanted to do was walk again. And it's very rare that you hear somebody who sustains an injury like this. It's very rare that you hear them say that that's not their goal. But life takes over and, I was living a very bleak, mundane life for about 4 years of just making that my focus and I had no life. Correct. I was absolutely miserable. And
I'm blunt with this, but it's a waste of time.
It's an absolute waste of time.
I'm so blunt with it. Like, I had a mate who dropped 250 grand to try and waddle very poorly, penguin style. as opposed to getting a wheelchair and start living your life.
I mean,
And I get it. I get the journey.
yeah,
I get it. Yeah, because I used to try and do it a bit. Like
It's-
I fully understand it.
trust the journey.
Yeah, but it is. When you
Yeah.
retrospectively, like, oh wow, I just get busy living
Absolutely.
differently. Yeah.
And that's the thing, like life takes over, and I had to make some pretty epic changes. And it was interesting because I attended a facility in America called Project Walk, and then
That's the one I'm
opened
talking about, yeah.
opened my facility, which, you know, even while I was training to walk again, amply decided not to call it anything to do with walk, because for me, I felt like that was, and it's what I was hearing as well, it's promising false hope,
Mm.
you know. And for us at the next step, it's never been about walking, it's been about, you know, having a quality of life.
Yeah, and like wellness in general.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like an overall full body experience. And hell, like I've seen quadriplegics run, but that's not going to be the outcome for everyone. But the outcome that we promise is the fact that, like, you're going to come in, you know, you may be feeling a bit shitty about the day, but you're going to leave with a massive smile on your face. And for me, that gives me a reason to get out of bed every
Yeah,
day.
and get the physical and mental, health
Exactly.
assistance you need. Don't mind
Yep.
it.
And before we get to the bowl of uncomfortable, we will say that the next step, sci.org.au, is your centre where you do massage, holistic, wellfulness, mindfulness, and of course everything that goes along with recovery for spinal cord as well. So make sure you look that up, and we'll have it in the show notes
Loves
as
a
well.
pun. Instagram. What's your Instagram?
Rhiannon Tracey, my real
You
life.
spelled real wrong. You spelled it like wheel.
I actually didn't get the pun.
Real
You didn't get the
life.
pun.
Rhiannon Tracey, my wheel.
Oh my God, you didn't get the
life.
pun?
I didn't get the pun.
Welcome.
Well,
Oh, really? Thank you.
Yeah,
Sorry,
there's
I
two very
just
good
caught
puns
up.
in
Got
there.
prognosis right though. Let's not forget that.
yeah, true.
The Bowl of Uncomfortable, Rhiannon, is a segment where people send us who listen to this podcast questions.
Before we get into that, can I ask one thing?
Please.
Awards and accolades. Nominated
I knew you was gonna do
22
this.
Young Australian of the Year, Women's Day, Women Future Nominee, Access Inclusion. How does all this stuff make you feel? Because, like, are you motivated by that? It's obviously, in a world where they're important to get those things for people with disability because then we get a platform, but really, like, do we ever get them for the right reasons, whatever? Where do you sit about this?
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because I don't have an OAM.
Is that you trying to fish for?
Order of Australia medal.
Yeah.
Yes. But, look, I'm pretty humble when it comes to things like that because, yes, I agree, especially as a keynote speaker, it definitely sounds great to have those things on your resume. But, when I was in hospital, everybody used to say to me, well, not everybody, but a lot of people used to say everything happens for a reason. And I think that they're very lucky that I was paralyzed because you just don't say that to somebody at such a vulnerable time. But, it's nice to be acknowledged for the hard work that you do, and it makes you, I guess, on those shitty days, it makes you acknowledge that this is the work that you've done and you're actually making a change in the world.
Yeah, that's fair enough. The Bowl of Uncomfortable is a segment where our listeners send us questions knowing a little snapshot of your life. They can be anonymous, so they can put their name to it. It's a question that they wouldn't feel comfortable necessarily asking you without knowing you on the street, but maybe they feel a little bit interested to ask you. You ready for these questions?
Oh, I'm
Can I
so
go
ready.
first?
Go for it.
Mine's funny because this is why I got a animal that is quite small, so I didn't do this. This is anonymous off Insta. Looking at your Instagram, you love animals. Have you ever been overpowered by a pet, e.g., pulling you out of your wheelchair whilst walking?
I actually used to have a great day.
Hang on. That's why hit us with the eye. Angus, what was your previous dog's?
Well, I've got tattoos of them. I'm a Great Dane guy.
It was bigger than me.
Yeah, when Dylan is in his chair, as he is now, as he always is, Buckets' face was level with Dylan.
No, hang on. Like physically bigger, stronger. Everything is bigger than me. And I'm going, what would I do with Buckets? Like, I wouldn't be able to do anything, right? And then you have a bloody Great Dane in a wheelchair.
Yeah, actually, that being said, she didn't so much as knock me out of my chair, came close to it, but my horse. So my horse.
Okay, let's go for a Great Dane and horse. I
I forgot about my horse.
I have a miniature dachshund who I can't control myself. We're on a flipping horse.
Well, he actually.
Wait till I get to my elephant.
Yeah, no, so he actually got his halter stuck on one of the handlebars and like pushed the chair forward. But it's like he knew that he did it because he took, like, at that point, I think I'd had him for like 4 days and he could have trampled me easily, but he just actually took a few steps back and was like, oh, yeah, and remembered every
so
time
you
I.
can speak to animals via mind flare.
I mean.
Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, they're
maybe.
empathetic animals, you
Just
know?
add that to the resume.
They can
Yeah,
understand.
animal mind reader.
Well, they say that horses are incredible for recovery. They're very, people. There's
Not everyone.
there's sanctuaries out there that work with people with disability around horses.
Horses for courses.
Mate, they have the same walking gait as a human.
Well, not my walking
Okay.
gait. Yeah, cheers. Yeah, you can walk a bit. See, you can walk a bit.
Why
You
stroll
can
when you can roll?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
Oh, why stroll when you can roll? I never heard that.
My bowl of uncomfortable question comes from an anonymous. Some of your modelling portfolio shows you without your chair and seemingly able-bodied. How do you feel about a brand portraying you as such, and how do you morally deal with this?
This has actually been something that I have mentally had to kind of work out and find balance, especially being somebody who is in the spotlight representing the disability community, because you have your people who are going to come at you because you're not in your chair in all your shots. And then you have you who, like, in reality, this is my life. I stand up to do the dishes. You know what I mean? So it is a part of my everyday life. I've come to the conclusion that if I feel like I can stand, I will stand in a shot and have my chair somewhere in the background. And if I'm having a shit day and I physically can't stand, I won't. But I think it comes down to education as well. So, that's what we do being disability advocates. Like, one of my great focuses is to continue to educate people so that they have that understanding as to not everybody who sits in a wheelchair sits in a wheelchair full time.
My competitors that I play tennis against, a lot of them can stand and they finish a match and they get up and walk off. And my mates are like, what the hell is that? Like fraud. And I'm like, no, this is part of the disability. Yeah.
Also, I think people have to recognise, an able-bodied idiot, Angus speaking here, that opportunities within any sort of media or entertainment role are few and far between. And so if somebody is offering you money that helps keep the roof above your head, I know there's a moral issue there for sure or something, but that's your decision to make, isn't
But
it?
if you can stand up too and sit down, who cares? Just do what you want.
Yeah.
That's what I'm kind of
Yeah.
saying. I'm saying, but as well, like people are, oh, you shouldn't do that. It's like, well, that $2,000 helped me do this or whatever that is.
Opinions like assholes, everyone has them. So,
Fair
I just do what feels best for me at the time. But it also comes back down to the messaging that I'm trying to portray as well. So, for me, I am really trying to include my chair as being something that's seen in everything that I'm putting out there, because at the end of the day, I do live my life on wheels, but also my injury itself is probably, it makes up about 20% of my life. So
Bowl of uncomfortable from Dylan.
Oh.
You've got a really bright wheelchair. It's pink.
I do.
That clashes with clothes. Why are you? Does that clash with your clothes?
That's
why I don't have a coloured
I've
wheelchair.
literally been a redhead for like 3 months, and my biggest concern was it going to clash with my red hair, because I've
It is
always
very
been
pink.
blonde.
Oh, yeah.
No,
It is
I
pink
love
as. It is bright pink.
Hey, pimp my ride.
I don't mind it, but I'm saying I have a monochrome black chair because it means I can wear all coloured clothes. If I had a, blue and green should never be seen. If I had a green chair and I'm wearing blue, I look whack. I'm just thinking that. Am I wrong? It's a real deep down wheelchair chat, but
you do you.
Okay,
I
you do
love
you.
my pink chair.
I love your pink chair too.
And I think one of the things that we very much internalize when we're first injured, and obviously, like, this is my point of view, understanding that you've been in a chair your entire life, but I know I've heard you speak about this, is, when you're out and about, people stare. People look at you. So I got to a point where...
I thought it was because I was good looking. Is it
Yeah,
'cause of my
well,
wheelchair?
same.
Also because he's going, get out of the way! Get out of the way!
As if.
But for me, it was like, well, if they're going to look, I'm going to give them something cool to stare about. And that, pink has always been a representation of my personality. I'm just like...
You rep it. You rep it good.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think if I look like a dickhead, you look great.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, imagine if I roll around in that.
I think that would be
Look
the
at me, I'm in a bright pink
best.
chair. My name's
I love
Dylan.
it.
Oh, that would be brutal.
Disability pride.
Yeah.
We're making it incredibly easy for you to find Rhiannon. All the links are below this where you're listening right now in our show notes. But once again, please get the pun. It's so obvious. At Rhiannon Tracey, my wheel life. RhiannonTracey.com.au as well for all of the details.
She is a powerhouse and great speaker. Been on this show. We've had the same management around the trap. So if you are looking for a speaker, Rhea is your woman. She's very good.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your time on
Thank
ListenABLE.
you.